Hello YouTube, the old geek here, and it's review time once again. As promised last time, in this video I will be taking a look at WG4, the Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun, which was written by Gary Gygax and published in 1982. The WG in the module code is short for World of Greyhawk, and rather oddly it was the first module in the series of WGs. I believe there was the intention to relabel several other modules to fill the WG1, 2 and 3 spots, but this never happened. One of those 3 modules was S4, The Lost Caverns of Sojkanth, and WG4 is designed to be played alongside that adventure, not so much as a sequel, but as a companion scenario. As always, before I delve into the scenario itself, I'll take a look at the presentation. It's weird. The module is an odd shade of mauve, and the cover image is unusual to say the least. From experience, when I was a teenager, it did not encourage me to buy it. But had I first seen it as an adult, I believe it would have intrigued me. This image feels a little crude. It's hard to make out exactly what it depicts, and now knowing what the adventure entails, it fits perfectly. Internal art is similarly odd, occasionally intriguing but lacking in dynamism. The temple maps are good and clear, but the wilderness map is an eyesore. It's much too busy. The text is rather dense in places, but it's good to see that Gygax was now following the trend of separating room contents a little in order to make the whole lot more readable. Taken in its entirety though, the presentation feels somewhat rushed, and I believe that is because it was. Given that it was intended to be paired with S4, the gulf between the two in how they look and how they are laid out is massive. In 1982, Tharizdun was a new name to the Greyhawk canon. A year later, he would be listed in the 1983 World of Greyhawk box set, but the details there were scant. The introduction to WG4 offers a lush description of an ancient malevolent force worshipped only by the most evil of souls, calling Tharizdun he of eternal darkness. The intro goes on to describe his eventual imprisonment in an unknown location and the reaction of his worshippers. This is one of the most evocative introductions to any module, and it sets the scene for this adventure absolutely beautifully. As I said, the adventure somewhat pairs up with S4, and this is how it does it. While playing S4, it is likely that the party will stumble across a vale occupied by a clan of gnomes. These little fellows are friendly and can provide the party with an accessible base of operations from which to launch their assault on the Lost Caverns. To tie S4 in with WG4, the gnomes reveal that they are being harassed by raiding bands of Norkers, small and vicious goblinoids, which are sometimes accompanied by larger creatures, mostly ogres and trolls. In return for their hospitality, the gnomes will ask the party to seek out the source of these raids, and if possible, to deal with them. The force behind the raids is a mountain giant by the name of Grog, who has taken up residence in a seemingly abandoned temple. The same temple that was once used by the cult of Tharizdun. He cares only for the loot acquired by his raiders, and he knows nothing of what lurks deep below. The Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun is an adventure of contrasts. The wilderness trek to reach the temple is bland and uninspired, but the module explodes when the party reach their destination. In order to gain access to the temple, the party need to get past Grog's forces. All of them. This battle is likely to take place in quite a confined space, making it even more perilous and dynamic, with creatures flooding up the stairs. There's a comprehensive section in the module on handling this huge melee, with lists of which creatures will arrive and at what time. This battle is immense and brutal, and immediately causes the insipid wilderness section to be forgotten. Once the dust finally settles, the module then takes another contrasting turn. As the party pick through the remnants of the giant's forces that may have fled, they will start to discover more about the nature of the place. Yes, it becomes a dungeon crawl, but this is one with a very different tone, a very dark tone. There are a few more monsters dotted around, but these are generally not as challenging as that initial horde. But it's now the dungeon itself that provides the challenge. The entire place is cut from black rock, the upper level being dull black basalt, the lower level being polished obsidian. There are patterns in the walls, usually lined in purple, that are described as being beyond comprehension, which if stared at for any length of time will cause the viewer's eyes to hurt. Some of these images cause nausea, and the whole vibe is one of otherworldliness. People have mentioned a possible Cthulhu inspiration, and I can certainly see that. Exactly how much the party learn about the temple and its origins is up to them. They could quite easily mop up the remaining monsters, take their loot, and leave, without ever discovering the dark heart of the module. And in my opinion, one of the best areas Gygax ever created. The Undertemple and the Black Cyst. The final focal point of the long-dead priesthood of the temple. A desperately black and frigid shrine to their vile god, and one which may still contain a little of his essence. A deadly finale holding great rewards, but which is utterly unforgiving to the greedy. The Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun sits in stark contrast to its companion adventure, The Lost Caverns of Sojganth. Both are classic dungeon crawls, but the focus is on the fantastic beasts housed in the Lost Caverns and their priceless artifacts. Here, the focus is on the dungeon itself, the environment and its atmosphere. It is a totally different challenge. Gygax, in his earlier modules in the Against the Giants series, included several locations with mysterious temples, which could drive the party members insane. These were not clearly expanded upon later in the series, but there were hints of powers other than Lolth driving the drow. I've not been able to find any concrete evidence of this, but was he laying down the foundations for what would become Tharizdun? Were those temples testing the water for this? Or did he build on those ideas when creating this adventure? Sadly, we will never know for certain. Certainly the Elder Elemental Eye would be a version of Tharizdun in later editions of the game. While the descriptions in the module are almost universally excellent, it's not exactly user-friendly. Some of the description numbering is a little confusing, and I wish they hadn't embedded the battle plan within the description of the uppermost level. That would have been better put in a separate section. There's also an Area 19 on the map, but no Area 19 detailed in the module. Add to this the inconsistent quality of the maps and the somewhat crude art, and the adventure feels unpolished. But I'm oddly happy that the strange cover did not entice me to buy this adventure when I was younger. I wouldn't have understood or appreciated it. The mass battle would have overwhelmed me, and the vibe would have been lost on my group as a whole. Looking at it all now, with age and experience behind me, I understand it. I now realise the reason for the colour of the cover, the weirdness of the art, and I can now appreciate it. I really can't recommend this adventure though for inexperienced DMs or players. The suggested character levels on the cover is 5 through 10, and that is unrealistic. The range suggested within the module is level 8 to 10, and that is much more like it. It's a tough module to dissect at times, a challenge to run smoothly, and equally to ensure it has the intended vibe. Quite a few monsters are taken from the Fiend Folio, but these are well chosen and fit the module's purpose. This is one of my favourite AD&D modules. It pushes all the right buttons for me. If it had been packaged as slickly as S4 was, then more people would almost certainly know about it. But maybe, just maybe, that's for the better. If it had featured art by Easley, Trampier and Otis, or if Gygax hadn't been forced to rush the entire project, then it would undoubtedly be high on many all-time greatest adventure lists. But it isn't, and I like it that way. I give The Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun 8.5 out of 10. The forgettable wilderness section and the crude editing only slightly tarnishing what I consider to be one of the best modules of the early 1980s. Once again, thanks for watching. I've been the Old Geek, and I'll see you again soon.